Good evening and welcome to the Theta Tau Professional Engineering Fraternity's first Executive Council YouTube AMA. My name is Jim Gaffney. I'm the Executive Director of the Theta Tau Professional Engineering Fraternity. I am a 2007 initiate of the Kappa Lambda chapter of the Kappa Sigma Fraternity at Shippensburg University, and I'm also a 2014 honorary initiate of the Tau Alpha chapter at SUNY Geneseo in upstate New York. The other people who are on our call who are up here on YouTube with me will introduce themselves in just a minute. The purpose of tonight's call is to give you all an opportunity to ask us questions and learn more about the running of the fraternity and to get to know us a little bit. We recognize that the only time you really see us is at convention or at regional conferences, and those events can sometimes be a little bit business oriented and a little bit impersonal. So hopefully this will be an opportunity for us to become a little bit more real and a little bit more human to you guys. If you have a question you'd like to ask, please add it to the live chat that you see on the screen. It should be over on the right-hand side of the screen. If you don't see it, there should be a button right below the image that says live chat, and you can click on that and add your questions into the live chat. And once we get done introductions, we'll start answering your questions. We will answer any fraternity-related question that is appropriate, of course. Keeping in mind that if you're looking for very specific information, like you want details on financials or anything like that, we're probably not going to have that information at our fingertips, and we'll go and get it for you and get it after this, at a later date after this event. So with that, I would like to give the other members of the EC the opportunity to introduce themselves.
Thanks, Jim. Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Van, Grand Regent. I graduated from the University at Buffalo in 2005. I became a national officer in 2006 and was elected to the Executive Council in 2010.
How's it going? My name is Dan McConnell. I'm the Grand Outer Guard. Started volunteering with the National Fraternity back in 2012 as the Gulf Regional Director, and I've been volunteering since then. I graduated from University of South Florida, an alum from Upsilon Gamma chapter down there. Graduated in 2011 with a degree in mechanical engineering.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Carr. I graduated from Virginia Commonwealth University Kappa Gamma chapter in 2015 in electrical engineering. I am currently the council delegate as of February of 2019 and was Great Lakes Regional Director from 2016 up until that point.
All right.
Hi, I'm Sajid Al-Halawi. I'm the Grand Treasurer of Theta Tau, alumnus from Kappa Gamma chapter. That's Virginia Commonwealth University. I graduated in 2010 with a degree in biomedical engineering.
All right, and Parker's coming on the screen in just a second. There you go.
Good evening, everyone. My name is David Parker. I am the Grand Marshal, a graduate from 2013 from Lambda Gamma chapter, which is Clemson, South Carolina, and I look forward to being here with you today.
Great. All right, thanks everybody for the introductions. While we're waiting for some other questions, we did get a handful of questions in before this, and I think to start things off, we'll start with a question that is on the lighter side, and that question is a hot dog a sandwich? And Jamie, I will give you this question to start with, and then we'll see if any of our other esteemed panelists want to join in.
Is a hot dog a sandwich? Well, of course it is. Jim, it's frankly meat in between pieces of bread with condiments. How is it not a sandwich? Okay. End of argument.
All right. Anybody else on the EC want to disagree with him? If they don't, we can move on to an actual question. Let's see. A question that we get a lot is why are dues so high? And I have a little bit of perspective on this because before I came to work for Theta Tau, I ran the Lambda Phi Epsilon International Fraternity and the Alpha Kappa Delta Phi International Sorority simultaneously, and I'm also a member of Kappa Sigma. So I've worked for and been a member of other organizations. So I can say with some authority that members of Theta Tau pay some of the lowest dues in the industry, and it's not really close. There are a lot of organizations out there that are paying, $2, $3, $4, $5, $6, even $1,000 a semester just for their national dues. And then they pay insurance on top of that, and then they pay for their annual convention on top of that. So members of Theta Tau are lucky to enjoy the low dues that they do. In addition to that, we haven't raised dues, and Jamie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 1993 was the last time we raised dues. So that's also pretty unprecedented in the scope or within the larger industry.
That's very true. And for those of you that may be saying, but wait, dues increased to $85 over the last year or two. Well, not exactly true. That extra money is actually going back to each chapter in a convention reimbursement fund.
Sure. All right. So we have a question that came in. Let's get this up on the screen. So the question that came in was, what motivates you to work with Theta Tau, and what do your tasks working with the fraternity look like? Jamie, do you want to start this one off?
Yeah, I can start this off, but I will let everyone know that it varies wildly by position. What really motivated me to volunteer for this fraternity was my work at the chapter level. When I first joined Theta Tau, I was a member of our colony, and we worked at that point to become a chapter. I was lucky enough to be a regent when we became a chapter, and all that hard work to push that through just made so many connections with me, and I made so many contacts within the fraternity that I wanted to continue to volunteer afterward. I was lucky enough to be tapped as a national officer to serve as regional director for 4 years, up until I was convinced to run for the executive council, where I was lucky enough to have been serving on the executive council since 2010. As far as what my tasks encompass, it varies wildly. As Grand Regent, I spend countless hours reviewing proposals from other council members from other chapters, as well as working nearly daily with the central office, especially during these times, just to ensure that the fraternity runs smoothly.
Cool. So personally, for me, I had a lot of personal growth joining the fraternity. When I got to college, I was definitely one of those really weird kids, But joining the fraternity definitely had a lot of personal growth. I met a lot of people, and I had a lot of really just it was a good time, and I learned a lot, and it was a great experience overall. Meeting alumni from the fraternity really was encouraging, so when I graduated, it was definitely something I wanted to make sure students in the future were getting a similar great experience. So.
Yeah, so I have a similar story, I think. When I was a student member, I felt like I gained so much from Theta Tau on the professional side of things, professional development-wise, and even I've met a lot of my lifelong friends through Theta Tau. And when I graduated, I wanted to really give back to the fraternity. So I was the Southeast Regional Director for 2 years, and then have then stepped into this role as the Grand Treasurer. And my day-to-day is, like Jamie said, it's kind of different each time. My main role, which I guess probably this might be a good time to mention this, the kind of the distinction between what I do as Grand Treasurer versus what Central Office does. And Jim handles a lot of the day-to-day financial operations of running the fraternity, of, handling invoices and dues and things like that. Whereas on my side, it's the investment portfolio and our kind of our bigger structure and setting our budget and working through policies to work for you all, students. So.
All right. Thank you guys for those answers. The next question, put up on the screen here. In one sentence, what is your favorite memory from Theta Tau? And I think that Dan said that he wanted to answer this one, so I'm bringing him up on the screen.
Awesome. Yeah, right when you had said that, one memory came to mind. I can't think it was probably my second or third year as an active, and we got invited to do a chili cook-off with some of the Greek community, and we had never really communicated with them. I think we got a contact with them somehow, but we went into there and we met at someone's house and we were perfecting the recipe, and we all dressed up in our little booth, and at the end of it we had a great time, and at the end we ended up just smoking everybody and we ended up winning, which was pretty cool just because we weren't really known really on campus that too well at the time, but we came out in droves that day and kind of showed them who we were, so that was really cool.
Man, one sentence, Dan, come on.
Multiple sentences.
For me, it would be every convention I've been to.
So in one sentence, 3 a.m. Krispy Kreme donut run after studying.
All right. Let's see. The next question. Let's see here. How do you balance your professional job versus your fraternity job? I'm not going to take a swing at this one because this is my professional job. This is my day job. But I'll let Jamie take this and then go from there.
On the previous question, as Grand Regent, I spend countless hours working on fraternity things. I'm lucky enough where my job is very accommodating with my travel schedule, in that I can devote a lot of time to the fraternity through travel to installations, certifications, and then I try to carve out at least a few hours every weekend to sit down and focus on the fraternity. It can be challenging, especially as Grand Regent. There's a lot to go through, but you just have to set schedules, set deadlines, and manage your time as best you can.
Absolutely. All right. Let's see here. Okay. Go ahead, Parker.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Perfect. So yes, job life is definitely a key thing in having the different roles we have in the fraternity and being on the executive council. As Grand Marshal, I serve in a couple different capacities in helping not only on the risk management side, but also helping with things like convention and helping, regional directors and program directors who need assistance. And one of the things that also fortunate to be in a job working with the U.S. Navy that provides the ability for me to travel to schools and chapters in need, to travel to locations that may need help and assistance through some of the risk issues that we face, but also helping teach and share some of the professional development skills that we learn in our careers with our brothers, but equally take those skills and the skill sets we learn in our organization to bring back to the workplace. It's all about finding joy and finding ways that you can leverage the skills and the knowledge that you learn across both your workplace and the fraternity to kind of find that sweet spot of having fun, but yet also adding value to what you do.
Wow. Well, I think David kind of
Thank
took
you.
everything I was going to say. Yeah, it's definitely about, prioritizing and making it a balance. I mean, this is stuff that I think we all enjoy. We're all volunteers, really. This isn't a paid position for us, so we want to be here. We want to kind of do this stuff. So it's sometimes it can be a challenge. I travel a lot for work too. Sometimes I'm 8-9 hour time difference from everyone else, but we make it work, and we try to prioritize, doing this good work for the fraternity.
All right. Our next question. How do you plan to keep up with every single chapter in normal circumstances during the school year? And I'm bringing Lindsay back on the screen. Lindsay oversees our visitation program and can speak to this.
Yeah, so I'll definitely say it can definitely be a struggle. But it's something we definitely see room for improvement. Over the last year, we've implemented a priority system, right? And so it's identifying chapters that are struggling, whether with finances or with their university or any number of factors. And so it's because we are volunteers, right? And we only have so many people. It can be difficult to visit every chapter. But something we're also implementing, right, is virtual visitation, which is something where checking in with those chapters that are performing well, right, but should still have that interaction with a national officer. So that's something we're getting guidelines ready for. So you still get what you need out of a visit without a physical visit occurring. So.
I will add to that, Lindsay, that we have set a goal to visit, to do an official visit for every chapter at least once per biennium, so that would be once every 2 years. We currently have almost 100 units with chapters and colonies, and it can be quite a challenge to meet that goal. But we strive to have all our national officers, especially our regional directors, at least touch base with all the chapters on a regular basis.
Thank you, Jamie.
And once again, I think everyone kind of took what I was going to say. So,
We're so good.
But I think things like this, having these AMAs and reaching out to folks via Facebook and different social media platforms that we already have is ways that we also try to keep up with all of our student members and chapters.
I'm muted. Sorry about that. Something that we're trying to do in the central office is to evolve the reporting that we're getting from you guys and make it more than just kind of a chore, more than just something that we do as a matter of course. Make it so that the data that we're getting is actionable, and so that we can drop things into a dashboard, and we can be looking at I know nobody on earth wants to look at an exponential growth chart right now, but we can be looking at those types of data and figuring out what the next problem that we're going to see is. That's where a lot of other organizations have kind of passed us by a little bit. They started getting really data driven in the last 10 years, and so I think in the next year or two, we're gonna do a lot to catch up to them and to use the information that you guys are giving us through the CMT and through the reports that you're making to kind of predict trends and figure out what changes and what evolutions we need to make within the organization. So with that, our next question, it's not all on the screen, but as an engineering student, it can sometimes be difficult to reach out to alumni and find solid guidance. How much has the Theta Tau network influenced your journey as a professional engineer? Not being a professional engineer, I'll let Jamie take the lead on this one.
Yeah, so I can start by saying the entire reason I have a job right now is because of this fraternity. There was a brother from my chapter who had a position at a company, and as I was struggling to find a job after graduation, He reached out to me and said, "Hey, Jamie, I've known you for quite a while. I know you love to travel. We've got this very particular position that we're having a hard time filling, and I think you'd be perfect for it." So he reached out to me. I applied for the job. He was on the interview committee. I don't know if it was biased or not, but I got the job, and now 14 years later, I'm still working for that same company. I will mention that within my company, one of our corporate vice presidents is an alum of Theta Tau. A few department directors are also alum of Theta Tau. So the network has helped me greatly. It's helped me interface within my company. Not just that, I know that I have plenty of other contacts out in the world. The key to tapping into that is talking to people. It's getting to know people, and not just the brothers in your chapter. As I mentioned before, one of my best memories are pretty much every convention, and that's because of the people that I've met at every convention. Some of these people that are brothers from other chapters that I hadn't met until convention will be my lifelong friends. And I know that I can count on them professionally as well as personally.
To kind of build off that with the whole networking with the finding a job opportunity, right out of just before I graduated, I got an internship, and my supervisor was an alumnus from our chapter, and I just kept doing that job, and it came up to about March, about 2 months before I graduated. He kind of pulled me to the side and he asked me, "Hey, how do you like your job?" I'm like, "Oh, it's fine." He's like, "Well, do you understand kind of what I do?" I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of." He's like, "Would you want to do my job?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So he already had plans on leaving to basically pursue another career path, and he basically gave the recommendation to move me into that position. And then by the time graduation came, it was about a long weekend, and then started full time, just like nothing, like nothing really happened. And I was very fortunate to have that connection and have someone that could vouch for me and get me into a position to where I could just get started right away. I'm still in that same job, kind of how Jamie is. Like they're a small company. It's only about 12 of us. And we have a good time.
All right. The next question, in what areas do you think that the fraternity can most improve? We'll start with Jamie and go from there.
So I think one of the biggest challenges we're facing right now is communication. Getting the information from the top disseminated throughout the fraternity. I think we've been looking at a lot more platforms, a lot more ways to communicate better, this being one of them, to get that information out. I know that central office is also tapping into a lot more technology to push information to the chapters. And now that we've grown to the point we have, central office has increased their staff levels so that they can essentially communicate more and more effectively with our student members and our alumnus members.
I don't know if David knows he's live. But anyway, so kind of from a different perspective, from the national level with our volunteers, I think one of the big things we can improve on and need to improve on is training, because ultimately the better we are as volunteers, the more support we can give you guys as chapters and as students. And that's definitely something we've been working on with onboarding new regional directors, since they're the most chapter facing of all of our volunteers. So.
All right. So the next question, see here. This one actually did not come in through the comments, but this one came in. When will a final decision be made about convention? Jamie, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to take a whack at this?
I can start. So this is a topic that the Executive Council and the Central Office are monitoring daily. We just had a meeting about this with the Convention Planning Committee. We will talk about it at our next Executive Council meeting, and we will update within the next few weeks. Our current plan is to evaluate through May and make a decision toward the end of May. Obviously, things are changing rapidly. More information becomes available every day. And as we get more guidance, as we look at more data, as we look at more and more what universities, what states, what governors are suggesting, what doctors are recommending, we'll make those decisions at those times. But right now, we are planning to make a go no go decision toward the end of May. Currently, we are continuing to plan as if convention will happen in August. So, Jim, I don't know if there's more you wanted to add.
Yeah, again, to kind of offer the outside perspective, or I should say the perspective from outside organizations. Most of the other organizations that have their convention around the same time that we do in August, most but not all are still full speed ahead. They're still planning to have their meeting. We're in close communication with the Hyatt in Tampa and with our partners at Hyatt Corporate to make sure that whatever happens, we are well positioned to have a good convention for you guys, which hopefully will be in August as planned. But if changes have to be made, working with them and working with our other outside stakeholders to make sure that the fraternity's needs are met.
And I will add that, as we are planning to go ahead with convention, we are planning on all the precautions we need to take as part of that. We will discuss, measures such as social distancing, such as sanitizing everything. The Convention Planning Committee is looking at all those possibilities and all those eventualities, and we will take every means necessary to keep our brothers safe.
Absolutely. All right. So the next question that we have kind of piggybacks off of that one, and it has to do with kind of planning for the eventualities that come with the COVID-19 situation. What is the fraternity financially at risk from COVID-19? And I brought Sajid, our Grand Treasurer, up on screen to take the first crack at this one.
Yeah, so fortunately, we are not really at risk for COVID-19. We are in a great position financially. The fraternity is used to operating in uncertain times. The fraternity made it through Spanish flu and made it through both world wars just fine. And a lot of that is due to not to try to pat ourselves on the back, but through the leadership from the top, and really from our previous executive directors, our executive director, we were able to save lots of costs where we can. So we're still in a good spot. I think we will have several semesters of no issues. And with just like everyone else, I'm hoping that this pandemic kind of settles down pretty soon. But I think we're great from a financial standpoint. Jamie, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you've covered most of it, Sajid. I guess the one thing is the fraternity does have our assets actively managed, and Sajid is working with our advisor, and we're looking to come out of this even stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll also add that I'm working with our general counsel, David Sergi, who's a brother of Theta Tau, and making sure that we're taking advantage of any federal programs that are made available. Because we are a 501c7 and not a 501c3, we did not qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program. And as Sajid said, because we do have assets that we have access to, it doesn't make sense to go after an SBA loan because they do come with interest, and there's no sense paying interest to get money that we don't strictly need. But we're monitoring, and if there is a new federal program that comes along or a state program here in Florida that could be beneficial to the fraternity, then we will move on trying to take advantage of that. So I'm going to leave Sajid on the screen because the next question comes from Jay Williams, and it's not all on the screen, but the question is, with the recent closure of chapters and with many more chapters losing membership over recent years, how do we plan on helping individual chapters with the coming recession? And in a separate comment, he qualified that by saying he's asking specifically in reference to individual chapters as opposed to the national organization. So again, that was how do we plan on helping individual chapters during what I think we all assume is going to be a recession coming up?
Right. So, we're obviously all brothers here, and we're not looking to try to take people out or something like that. It's not anything crazy like that. We will obviously listen to your concerns, listen to any issues that you have, and work with you, work with chapters to make whatever decision or whatever agreements we need to make sure that you guys stay successful, healthy chapters. I think everyone would agree that we're not looking to try to shut people down over financial reasons or anything like that. So if you have concerns, if you have issues, please reach out to Jim and your regional directors or really any of us. And we can definitely work with you guys on coming up with a solution for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Sajid said, if your chapter is struggling, hopefully, as I said earlier, once we get these data metrics in place, we'll be able to identify that your chapter might be entering a period of struggle before it happens. But if you do find yourself in trouble and you need help, call us and tell us. The time to ring the alarm isn't when you're down to your last $6 in the chapter checking account and you've got a dues bill that just landed in your email. The time to come to us is before that, to say, hey, we're in trouble. We don't know what to do. The central office, as Sajid said, we're not here to be a debt collector. We're not here to to make sure that every red cent is collected. Obviously, everyone needs to pay their fair share. Everybody needs to pay their dues, their insurance, their initiation and pledge fees, etc. But if it is in the best interest of a chapter and of the general fraternity that maybe a deadline be extended or maybe some late fees be waived, we're going to do that. My understanding is that during Abe's tenure, that was the standard operating procedure, was that if it's in the best interest of the chapter, fees do not need to be, late fees don't need to be added, penalties don't need to be added. I'm certainly going to I'm going to continue that in my tenure as executive director. Do you have anything you wanted to add to that, Jamie, or should we go on to our next question?
No, I think you guys covered most of it.
Great. All right, the next question. As a newly installed chapter, what aspects can we emphasize more to keep improving member involvement?
If you think back, when your chapter was installed, you had a meeting with the executive council members and volunteers that were there. The big goal we tried to get across was planning and setting SMART goals. Keeping your members engaged means to keeping things moving forward. To keep moving things forward, you need to have goals, both short-term and long-term. To know what you're striving toward keeps people engaged, and they should be constantly be evaluated as to what those goals are trying to achieve. Something that you set out for at the beginning of the year may be different once You initiate new members, and the chapter changes over time. So constantly evaluate what you're working toward. Once you realize what you want to accomplish, you can then set the appropriate goals.
Lindsay, I think you might be muted.
I am. Thank you. Sorry. To jump on that, you have to make things fun, right? To keep people engaged, it has to be something that's entertaining. And don't get me wrong, highway cleanups can be super fun, right? As long as you're building that bond with other people. And something we like to encourage and is people join people, right? So the whole reason people join the organization, right, is to join other people. So as long as you can keep that at the center, I think that's kind of important.
Great. And there was a follow-up to that question as well, asking particularly about events that have been canceled due to the COVID-19 situation, and how are we going to maintain the member experience. We're going to adopt a lot of online platforms like this one. We, as we've said in a few communications, we've been working to adapt to the new member education process to an online available in addition to the on-campus process that's always been there. We were hoping to have it out by now, I'll be very honest, but it has proven to be a much bigger project than we anticipated. And with something as important as new member education, we don't want to rush out a half-baked program that is going to result in, you know, a generation of members of Theta Tau who didn't have a good new member experience, because that could really be damaging to the fraternity. So we're working to roll that out as quickly as we can, and as soon as it's ready, you know, we'll get it out there, but only once it's ready. Outside of that, we're looking at doing an online officer transition training later this semester, well, later this month, really, because it's April, and that would be available to all of the incoming and outgoing chapter officers, and that would be run by members of the Executive Council and the central office staff. That's just the stuff we've planned for this month. We're looking ahead to the summer, and while I don't think that this will come to pass, we're also starting to make plans for what happens if colleges and universities remain, campuses remain closed in the fall, and we end up still in a remote education environment during the fall 2020 semester. Jamie, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, what I'd just like to add is I encourage every chapter, now that we know we're in this for a little bit longer, to reach out to all your brothers, have online Zoom meetings, and unofficially just hang out with your brothers, plan a professional development event online. You know, everybody dress up in a shirt and tie, and, you know, critique each other's professional dress. Just hang out, interact with your brothers, stay in touch with your brothers. They will get you through the hard times. That's what joining a fraternity is about. You can count on your brothers now, so I encourage you to continue to reach out and interact with them, and that will help keep your engagement and your experience a positive one in Theta Tau.
Sure. All right, the next question is from Lexi. Do you plan on reevaluating your investigation procedures after your mishandling of new chapter suspension? I imagine Dan, our risk management chair, will want to hop on this one, but I'll start by saying, while I don't necessarily grant the premise that the situation was mishandled, I will be the first one to admit that the situation was far from ideal and far from the way we want situations to go when we're dealing with health and safety issues at our chapters. And yes, we are reevaluating our investigating procedures. Last month, I wrote a whole new investigation procedure for the Risk Management Committee and really all of the national officers to follow when we get into situations like the ones that unfortunately we find ourselves in on a lot of campuses every year. And that new process is working its way through our review process within the National Officer Corps. And then once it gets through there, it'll be released to the membership. And I believe the plan is for it to go into effect for the fall semester so that everybody has some time to digest it, understand it, and then have it go into effect after that so that nobody's surprised by a potential change in policy. Let me bring Dan up here on the screen as well.
Yeah, Jim, just kind of to echo what you said, just kind of going over processes, and you pretty much covered most of everything on that. But I think with year after year, us seeing kind of an uptick in kind of we'll call them like risk management incidents happening, it's becoming more prevalent to have a not so much documented way of handling things, but something that's more of a common practice that we know how to go about. You know what constitutes a on-site visit, what constitutes a phone call. Most of which things, a phone call is easy to, especially whether it's for the chapter contacting us about something or us contacting the chapter to try to work out a situation over the phone, whether it be whether to confirm or to even just clear up maybe a miscommunication.
Sure. All right. All right. Other questions? Let's see here. Jamie, did you have anything you wanted to add to that last one?
No.
Okay. Let's see here. Looking through the questions we got in advance. We did get a kind of a general question about what it is that the insurance goes to pay for. We have a few different lines of insurance. We have general liability insurance that protects the fraternity in the event that somebody gets injured at a fraternity event or something like that. We have some kind of general business insurances. We have a directors and officers policy that protects me, the central office staff, and the other national officers in the event that we have to be defended in court or something like that. We have the property policy that all of the chapter houses are insured under. That's about a third of the total cost of our insurance package, but that's paid for just by the chapter houses. That's not paid for by the general fraternity. And then a bunch of other small little insurances. Our insurance premiums, just like our dues, are among the lowest in the industry. And actually, our insurance premiums went down this year for the first time ever. They went down like 25 cents per member or something like that. It wasn't, it wasn't really a meaningful decrease, but it was a decrease in a market where a lot of organizations are seeing their insurance premiums go up by 100% over last year, or in some cases 200% over last year. Ours actually went down by a fraction of a percent. So that, I think, is a testament to the focus on health and safety that our chapters have and that the national organization had long before I got here, and that we will continue to have while I'm working with the executive council to run the organization. So that's kind of the broad strokes of what our insurance covers. I could, I do a whole hour-long presentation on this because some chapters really like to know all of the details. I won't get into all of them here, but those are the broad strokes. If you do have more detailed questions about what our insurance covers, specifically if you're asking if something that your chapter is doing is covered, please reach out to the central office. Jamie, did you have anything you wanted to add on that one?
Yeah, Jim, could you just explain how insurance is calculated for each chapter?
Sure. So insurance is calculated for each chapter based on a 3-year average of your chapter's membership. It's designed to insulate chapters that have big spikes in membership. So, if you take a huge pledge class, we don't want your insurance to go up. We don't want your insurance premiums to skyrocket. So it's not, strictly speaking, a per member cost because, if your chapter was much larger or much smaller, last year than it is now, you're going to pay a little bit more or less per member than maybe the next chapter down the road that has had relatively stable chapter membership. And that's the way the insurance company wants us to calculate it for the chapters as well. There are a lot of organizations that pay it per member per year, and they take what's called a summer number. So they usually take the number of members on July or on June 1st, which is after all the spring, after all the seniors have graduated out in the spring, and that's the number they take. But the 3-year average provides a more stable price for the chapters, and it keeps you guys from getting kind of surprised. Shouldn't really come as a surprise. If you take a huge pledge class, you know the costs are going to go up, but helps prevent unexpected increases in cost for you guys. Another question that we got in, what is the central office's next big project? There's quite a list. But the big one right now, and we actually just rolled this out over the last couple of days, is changing the way we do membership status change processing. And that sounds totally administrative and boring, but it's actually probably about half of what it is that we do in the central office. So anytime a member changes status, whether they go from just being a rush to a pledge, when they get initiated and become a member, and then if they go on co-op, or if they go premature alum, or when they graduate, there's paperwork associated with that. And up until recently, it was literal paperwork. And I still, and the mail's getting forwarded here to my house. So every day I get envelopes with physical paperwork from chapters that were sent to us to be processed. So we're moving away from that. Certainly, we're moving to digitize everything, but we're moving to get as much of it as we can under one roof in the CMT, so that you're not having to utilize multiple different platforms to do very similar tasks. So the premature alumnus form will be moving into the CMT starting in the fall. The pledge form will be moving into the CMT starting in the fall. The initiation processing for you guys has always been in the CMT, but for the central office, it was in 3 different systems, which is why it took so long. So now we've moved it all into the CMT, on the back end of the CMT that you guys can't see, that we can. And so today I processed, I think, like 40 initiation orders myself here on one computer instead of the 3 that we had to use in the central office when we used to do it. When we used to do it the old way. That's the long way around to saying that the next big central office project is digitization and streamlining of the processes that we do. I think another version of that question that I can probably pose to Jamie is, what is the executive council's next big project? What's the next big thing that the fraternity is going to be working on?
So that's kind of a loaded question. The next big thing we're working on right now is convention. I know, Jim, I interface with you almost daily on that interaction between the central office and the executive council. But the overall theme that the executive council needs to be working on would be supporting our strategic plan and working on our strategic vision. The fraternity renewed their strategic plan a few years ago. And from that, we identified a few key areas that we wanted to focus on, and continuing to support that, starting some new projects and continuing old projects around alumni engagement, around student experience are some of the big generic projects that we have going on in the background. Specifics would include small programming like the Ambition in Motion mentoring. All those would feed back into our strategic vision.
Sure. Looking here at the next question. Another thing actually that the central office is going to be doing, our lease is up here in Miami. So we have to figure out, where the central office is going to be here after the middle part of next year. So we'll be making that decision hopefully this summer and in the fall. let's see. Looking at the next questions. What are some, Madison asked if we can share what are some of the main topics and discussions being brought forward at this year's national convention. I know certainly we are going to be talking a fair bit about health and safety, and I'll bring Dan back up here onto the screen, and Dan can talk a little bit about the statistics. But we've seen a tremendous number of health and safety issues coming up. What we used to call risk management issues, we're now calling health and safety issues, and we've seen an enormous number of them just in the eight months and change that I've worked here. We've seen an enormous number, and I've done a lot of traveling and visited a lot of chapters to try and address those situations. So we're going to be having some conversations about our risk management policy and the expectations of members and chapters, because what we're finding is we go to a campus and they say we've been accused of doing this. We're doing it because we didn't know there was anything wrong with it, and we want to head those kinds of things off at the pass. So I don't know if Dan, you have anything you want to add to that as well.
Yeah, just to kind of definitely an uptick. I think last biennium we had about 36, 34 trackable items, and this year, this biennium, we're already up to about 45, 46. It's quite a lot to have to keep your thumb on, and just kind of get an idea what's going on out there. And unfortunately, it's one of those items where with health and safety, wherein as you go, it kind of doesn't get easier, but you kind of go through the motions because you start seeing a lot of the same. Either you have universities sending letters to chapters, and chapters are not sure what to do with those, and kind of going through and with them on how to respond, what are the next steps after that. And I think these are things that we will talk about at convention, whether a chapter finds themselves in that sort of situation, or in really any situation where they feel uncomfortable. And I've had scenarios in this biennium where we've had brothers come forward, and even brothers that did come forward, and we were able to within that night or over a couple of days, we were able to talk them through the right procedure to address it, and get it resolved fairly quickly because they did come forward. It becomes a problem when you have when we as a national fraternity find out about a circumstance maybe a month after the university knows about it. And we look kind of, we end up kind of with an egg on our face, not knowing what's going on, when we could have been there to help support the chapter. So a lot of those things will be going on. One of those items, like you said, I could mention health and safety would definitely comes into play.
And while health and safety and risk management is one of the discussion points we will have at the convention, another initiative we've begun is to take a closer look at our policy and procedure manual, and to clean that up a bit. It's become a bit bloated and inconsistent in areas, needs clarification in some others. So there is effort to take a closer look at that and clean that up a little bit. In addition, I expect within the next coming weeks, I will be sending out a call for legislation. Anything that chapters want to bring to the table, bring to the floor at convention, we can get a start on that now, and work with chapters on any proposals that they may have for legislation as well. In addition, at the convention, we always try to provide some sort of educational programming. I know this year we're looking to do the same. If the convention remains in the current format, we will definitely have other educational programming specific to the individuals and to the chapters.
Sure. All right. Next question. comes from Ryan Horn. Doesn't all fit on the screen, but is there a national database of where all alumni are located once they graduate? As a graduate, it would be nice to meet with other Theta Tau alumni my age that may be from other chapters in my new city. Kind of a two-part answer. There is kind of such a database. It's accessible through the website, but we discovered recently that it's not working the way it's supposed to. The company that manages the kind of back end of our database is not considered an essential business. Getting them on the phone to get things addressed has been kind of a challenge. That's why there was a big lag in one of the lags in initiation processing was because we were locked out of the database for 3 weeks. So we're working to get that back up. That database allows you to search for individuals. It does not allow you to search a geographic area. We've kind of gone back and forth about whether we want to do that. There are some privacy concerns with that, with people, maybe not wanting all, 30,000 Theta Tau members to have their home phone number. So we're working through that, and the hope is that we'll have a tool like that in the future. But right now, you can look up individuals. You can't look up like all the Theta Tau members that live in, say, Washington, D.C. or Miami or something like that.
I will add that every few years, Theta Tau has put out a membership directory. And I believe, Jim, there are a few extra copies of that laying around the central office.
Yeah.
People can request those copies. And Jim will be more than happy to sell you one.
Yeah.
That includes a directory of all our membership. In addition to that, we also have alumnus Facebook page, as well as our LinkedIn site that all members are encouraged to join.
Sure. There was a question. I'm going back here. Why didn't we have Leadership Academy last year? So the Leadership Academy is hosted by the Theta Tau Educational Foundation, and unfortunately the foundation was not in a position where they could host the event. The hope is that we will be able to continue to have that meeting in future years, but right now we're focused on Convention 2020, and hopefully after it goes off without a hitch in August, we'll pivot to talking about the Leadership Academy in 2021. And we're coming up on time here, so our last question comes from Jake. How is being a member of the Grand Executive Council compared to being a member of your chapter's Executive Council? Jamie, I'll let you take that one to start.
Yeah, so firstly, I just want to offer a slight correction. It's not the Grand Executive Council. It's properly referred to as the Executive Council. Sorry for being pedantic, but I just yelled at some national officers for that. So I'll be consistent. As far as the differences, to be on the Executive Council, as opposed to being on my chapter's council, it's a lot more work for myself. But that type of work that I do is very different. I'm now focusing on the needs of all the chapters. I'm focusing on the operations of our national organization. I'm here to support our central office, to give them direction, to help them get better. Not only that, but I'm working on, or I should be focused on the programming and the needs of all our student members. We should be striving, especially at the central office, to meet the needs of our student members. So we, as an executive council, need to be focused on the big picture. In addition to that, the executive council essentially serves as the board of directors for the fraternity. I know it's not necessarily the best way to look at it, but the fraternity is a business, and we do have certain fiduciary duties that we need to meet as part of the executive council. So we go through those issues. We meet our duties both to the business side of the fraternity as well as all our student members. But at the same point, we can't forget about our alumnus members. When you become a brother of Theta Tau, you're a brother for life, and we want to strive for more engagement throughout that time. So we have this overarching need to look at all sides of things, rather than just focusing on the individual smaller goals of each chapter.
Kind of going off of that, I know my experience with being on the executive board for a chapter versus being on the executive council. When you're active, it's a much more direct role. You're actively changing your chapter. And when I was on the board for my chapter, I was primarily involved with pledging. So modifying the pledge experience and making sure they're getting their good experience with their fraternity, right? But as a council delegate and being on executive council, it's a much more indirect role because we, as Jamie said, we're a board of directors, and it's guiding the fraternity in the direction that is best for the fraternity. So.
Sorry about that, I was muted. Thanks for that, Lindsay. So with that, we are at time. So Dan asked me to give a quick plug. With the exception of myself, everybody that you've seen on the screen is a volunteer. I'm the only one up here whose livelihood is linked to the fraternity. Everybody else is doing this out of a sense of responsibility to the fraternity and a desire to see it grow and prosper. And we do have openings, not on the executive council, but obviously because that's an elective position. But we do have a number of positions open. We have some, and I'm reading off a list here. We have regional director positions open, a service director position, and then positions on the volunteer and convention committees. If you are interested in serving in the national leadership of the organization, I encourage you to email volunteer@thetatau.org. As we approach convention, EC elections will happen. And so there will be announcements about that. If you are interested in serving in the elected leadership of the fraternity, those announcements will be coming in the next couple of months in the lead up to elections at the convention. So with that, Jamie, any parting words?
Yeah, so I just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I hope we answered your questions to the best of our ability. I encourage you all to stay safe, stay healthy. If you need help, reach out to your brothers. We all took an oath and we are all pledged to do so. So please reach out, stay engaged, and thank you all.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. I hope that you have a great night. I hope that, as Jamie said, you stay safe, wash your hands, don't touch your face, stay 6 feet apart. And I look forward to seeing and meeting many of you at convention this summer.